11 of the creepiest creatures in Fallout? Let's go. Found only in Fallout 4's Nuka World DLC, bloodworms were originally aquatic creatures found in the Atlantic Ocean. Following the Great War, they mutated to become adept to not only land but dry and dusty environments as well. They are roughly the size of an adult human and have a terrifying burrowing ability very similar to mole rats, and even more terrifying is that they will sometimes even inhabit dead bodies of larger animals such as Brahmin to ambush their prey. But if you do pay close enough attention, you may be able to notice that the corpse is slowly twitching and bulging, which is a pretty good indication that you should stay pretty far away. Now, despite having a creepy appearance that might trigger a few hidden phobias, bloodworms typically do not have a lot of health and are very easy to deal with. Yao Guai are best compared to the American black bear, which these creatures originally mutated from. Named by descendants of the Chinese held in the camps before the Great War, the Yao Guai still bear some distinct characteristics of the American black bear, mainly the massive hulking build and terrifying claws, and top it off with ghost white eyes and next to no fur, makes this one of the scariest creatures to encounter. Now, not all Yao Guai will attack on sight. In Fallout 3, wasteland scavengers can be seen traveling with some Yao Guai, proving that at least some of them can be trained or dociled. But don't be fooled by that, because Yao Guai can be seen attacking Deathclaws, proving that they have no fear or care for their own safety when it comes to their prey. Now, encountering a wild Yao Guai in combat, they will present a moderate challenge, especially for those not prepared for their speed, immense attack power, and high damage resistance. In Fallout 4, they also have a powerful staggering effect that can pose even more difficult for melee attackers. Arguably, one of the most terrifying aspects of these creatures is that they don't take increased headshot damage, meaning regardless of the approach, you might have a tough time defeating a Yao Guai. Based off the real-world salamanders, Gulpers are found in Fallout 4's Far Harbor DLC, Fallout 76, and they even have a pretty terrifying cameo in the Fallout TV show. Gulpers on the East Coast were created by years of nuclear fallout and the persistence of the fog, also known as Adam's Veil, by the Church of the Children of Adam. The East Coast Gulpers are mutated from the Hellbender Salamander, while the West Coast Gulpers have a much more darker story. After the Great War, experiments were being done in Vault 4 to hybridize humans and rad-resistant creatures. They did this by impregnating women with genetically engineered embryos. After the uprising in Vault 4, the Gulpers managed to escape and nested in the flooded areas around Hollywood. No matter which Gulper you are facing, they are large, terrifying creatures that can put up a decent fight in combat. They can utilize their environment to launch heavy objects at enemies, such as cars, and you'll even find them hanging from trees waiting to ambush unsuspecting wastelanders. And even on top of all that, they can also slowly regenerate health. Their evolution from cute, harmless salamanders to gigantic genetic abomination really adds to the creepy aspect of these guys. As a Florida man, I have a personal connection to Gatorclaws. I just think they're freaking awesome. Found exclusively in Nuka World, Gatorclaws are the result of Dr. Darren McDermott using old world technology long after the Great War to try to provide himself some organic security. He did this by mixing chameleons and American alligators. Who would have thought that that would have ever turned out to be a good idea? I don't know. He wanted something that could protect the Nuka-Gen replicator, but what he created was way too ferocious and impossible to control. After being attacked by his own creation and mortally wounded, he left a message pleading to anyone to shut down the replicator, which had begun producing Gatorclaws at an alarming rate.
This is Dr. Darren McDermott, last known survivor at the Safari Adventure Replication Facility. This is my final recording. I've done something horrible. The thing I created, the thing I called the Gatorclaw, they must be destroyed. They can't be tamed. They can't be controlled. Their sheer ferocity is like nothing I've ever seen. And now, the Nuka-Gen replicator is out of control. It's producing them at an Find my passcode, or Dr. Hines. Shut down the replicator before it's... before it's too late.
These Gatorclaws will present a challenge in combat, as they are pretty comparable to Deathclaws and even stronger in some instances. However, there are only 19 basic Gatorclaws found in Nuka World, and they don't respawn. And there is even a quest that you can do relating to stopping their continued production, which will eradicate them completely. Although Gatorclaws can be eradicated from the game entirely, it still doesn't change the fact that giant mutated alligators that walk around and kill anyone they see is absolutely terrifying. And with a lot of talks about the next Fallout maybe being down south, I think there might be a high chance that we see some more Gatorclaws. A Vault-Tec experiment gone wrong would explain majority of the things on this list, but none more than Gary. The dozens of Garys found in Vault 108 are all products of a cloning experiment within the vault, which produced a small army of increasingly violent and deranged copies of one former vault resident. These clones are hostile to everyone and everything except other clones, and the only word you will hear coming out of their mouths is their own collective name, Gary.
Gary!
And there is one exception to that. Sometimes, as they are dying, they will spout words of defeat upon their death.
Oh!
These guys definitely have a huge scary factor, but they're not that strong and really only have numbers. But even then, they're typically spread all throughout Vault 108, and only a few of them are actually armed. And speaking of Vault 108, as you progress through Vault 108, you can find the cloning log holotape, which is at first corrupted, but once properly translated, it reads, Gary 53 is hostile towards all non-clones, as was the case with the previous 52 attempts. We may have to consider a means of disposal of the pre-existing Gary clones, as the observation rooms are getting quite full. Gary 54 exhibits no change in hostility toward non-clones. If anything, he is even more hostile. Dr. Peterson can attest to this, having been injured while examining Gary 54. Tomorrow we are going to dispose of several of the Gary clones, which will leave room for many more attempts. Also in Fallout 3, there was a cut holotape labeled interrogation log that was a little disturbing.
Gary?
Listen, son, I know we're ill with love. I'm sorry. I really am.
Gary? Gary?
Right. You can drop the ad for now. I'm not here to hurt you.
Gary?
Look, just remove the pit boy, and we can part ways.
Gary! Gary!
You know what? Fuck this. Hand me that saw. And turn off the recorder.
Gary! Ah, Gary. Gary!
The Lobotomites found scattered throughout New Vegas' Old World Blues DLC are a byproduct of terrifying science experiments in which former research facility residents, or wastelanders, were collected by drones and taken to Big Mountain, only to have their vital organs surgically removed and replaced with electronics, and their brains completely destroyed or lobotomized, thus the name. This was all done to keep the inhabitants of Big Mountain inside, and not let the secret get out, as only a brain in a human body could get past the radar fence. They were meant to be able to use the Tesla coils put into their head to operate normally, while their brain functions remotely. However, there was a problem with the Autodox programming, which instead destroyed the brains, rendering everyone a mindless shell. They now roam Big Mountain as hostile, brain-dead killing machines, wearing what is basically a suit of flesh. They walk around the Big Empty, collecting random objects and worshipping a toaster as seen in the Cuckoo's Nest. And according to Dala, if left alone, 43% of the time, Lobotomites will either fight for dominance or inject bodily fluids into each other.
Looping, yes. It is a scientific fact that hormones drive a percentage of lobotomites into recursive behavior patterns. It varies according to the number and density of lobotomites that have infected an area. In 43% of observed cases, two lobotomites left alone will fight for dominance or inject bodily fluids into each other's orifices. Unsanitary.
The Lobotomites are left to endlessly wander around Big Mountain, only ever being used by the think tank to clean or become guinea pigs in more experiments. The machinery and electronics inside of them make them quite durable in combat, but they typically don't have any further intent other than to kill. Lobotomites are also shown to know how to operate basic weapons and firearms and are able to attack in groups. And occasionally, as they are attacking, you may hear them shout this. Found in New Vegas's Dead Money DLC, the Ghost People roam the villa sections of the Sierra Madre, shambling around and attacking intruders with makeshift spears, bear trap gauntlets, and improvised explosives. Before the Great War, Frederick Sinclair built the Sierra Madre as a luxurious resort for the wealthy elite. Or at least that's what it was at face value. It was actually a gift to protect the woman he fell in love with, Vera Keys. However, when the bombs fell, the casino was sealed off from the outside world, becoming a trap for anyone who entered its premises, due to the toxic cloud surrounding the Madre. And this toxic cloud originated from Big Mountain, created by Big Mountain's Z-43 innovative toxins plant. Sinclair needed funding and technology, and in exchange, Big Mountain gained a testing ground full of unknowing people. After becoming aware of the toxic cloud by the workers, Sinclair reached out to Big Mountain, who offered the use of the chemical hazmat suits, which was another experiment unknown to Sinclair. The workers at the Madre had unknowingly become test subjects in multiple experiments. The suits were bulky and hard to move in and made talking very difficult, so they resorted to sign language to communicate. While investigating the cause of the toxic red cloud, the workers found that the gas would corrode the metal on the suit's lock, allowing the gas to slowly seep in. After the Great War erupted and many of the Madre's inhabitants were massacred by holograms, the Madre's infrastructure slowly started to break down, allowing more and more of the cloud to get in. Now, it's not entirely known how the Ghost People came to be, but it would seem that the workers, desperate to survive, all put on the hazmat suits that they would only become trapped inside of. And after years of being trapped inside, constantly touched by the cloud's decaying embrace, they would eventually become Ghost People. Now, Ghost People are not completely gone when it comes to intellect. They can be seen setting traps and ambushes and setting bait to lure their prey. They have also mutated to become incredibly hard to kill. Shooting or stabbing them only renders them immobile for a limited time, until they start twitching and slowly rise again. It's best to take their limbs off or completely destroy them if you want them to stay down for good. The scariest part about the Ghost People is that they don't reproduce, and some people say that instead of killing their prey, they'll drag unwilling victims deeper into the cloud, strap them into a hazmat suit, damning them to the same fate.
Residential area, clinic, police station. Should keep away from the police station, it's a Ghost People hangout. Ghost People don't come into the villa much. West Town and East Town, though, they're thick with the cloud and Ghost People, like hunting grounds.
Found in the Point Lookout DLC for Fallout 3, Swampfolk are mutated humans with large, deformed bodies that are not only the result of radiation exposure, but also centuries of inbreeding. By 2277, they live in the swamps and are extremely hostile to any outsiders, with the marsh folk being the only ones able to trade with them. Even before the Great War, the people of Point Lookout were extremely isolationist and hostile to the outside world. The Swampfolk culture can be traced back to Constance Blackhall. Using the Kerbekni, she wielded influence and power over the Swampfolk. Using this same power, Blackhall extended her life even after the Great War, holding power over Point Lookout for quite some time. Eventually, the Kerbekni was taken from her and she would end up dying without its power. The book would find its way back to the Swampfolk, and even in 2277, the Swampfolk performed the same bloody rituals installed by the Blackhall family many years ago. They would torture innocent people to their deaths at their sacred ritual site where they keep the Eldritch Tomb, all while chanting incoherently, mimicking their ancestors whose original meanings have all been lost to time. Being somewhat smart, the Swampfolk are seen attacking in groups, hiding their faces to make headshots more difficult, and setting traps and ambushes for unsuspecting victims. Tunnelers are one of the scariest creatures found in Fallout, as these reptilian-human hybrids lurk in the darkest areas of the Divide, with their distinctive glowing eyes and extremely sharp teeth. Found only in the Lonesome Road DLC for New Vegas, they present a solid threat to even the strongest of couriers, and their backstory is almost a complete mystery. Ulysses speculates that they may be the result of the Great War, heavily mutating them, adapting them for life underground. They would then live underground for nearly 2 centuries until the courier blew up the Divide, unleashing them.
Tunnelers. Predators that make their own roads beneath the ground here. Divide broke their sky, showed them the world above, and the scent of new prey.
But luckily for everybody else, they can't stay out for too long due to their extreme light sensitivity. So fighting them with flashbangs will make your life a little bit easier. The Tunnelers also reproduce very quickly and hunt in packs, which are dangerous enough to take down a Deathclaw.
Seen them tear apart Deathclaws. Deathclaw might get some, but the rest will swarm it, tear it apart, like Denver hounds.
One of the creepiest things about these guys, though, actually comes from Ulysses' speculation that they will expand into the Mojave and pose a great threat to it.
They'll start emerging throughout the Mojave in time. Might be years, probably less. They breed fast, hunt in groups, more than enough to bring down the strongest in the Mojave, once they draw blood.
The Y-17 trauma harness was one of the many technological wonders created at Big Mountain. They ultimately ended up as another horrifying threat roaming the wastelands featured in Fallout New Vegas. The suit was designed for ground warfare, and was intended to take control of the user and automatically return them to a home base once they sustained enough injury. However, due to an error in the design, these suits would not be able to distinguish when the user had died or not, and many of them didn't have a designated home base. These two things combined meant that these suits would carry around dead bodies for over 200 years, wandering aimlessly, unaware that the user it was designed to protect had passed long ago. However, there is a darker story behind some of these suits, as some soldiers and scientists were injured in these suits without an established home base, meaning the suit walked them around aimlessly until they died of their injuries, or even worse, walked them around until they succumbed to dehydration over the course of many days. Luckily, one of the endings to Old World Blues has the Autodoc finding a way to deactivate the suits, finally releasing its captives.
In time, the Autodoc found a way to deactivate the Y-17 trauma harnesses, releasing the corpses they had held prisoner for almost 200 years.
Encountering these suits in Old World Blues can present a dangerous challenge, as not only can they take a beating, but you'll sometimes find them equipped with very powerful weapons, such as heavy incinerators and Gatling lasers. So just because they look like a skeleton in a suit, doesn't mean they're pushovers.
Hey, we'll turn out the lights.
If you ask anyone who played Fallout 3 or New Vegas, at an age they probably weren't supposed to be playing them, they'll likely tell you one of the scariest things they encountered in both games were the horrifying Centuars. The West Coast Centuars were created by the Master. They would toss random animals and even humans into a vat of FEV and see what abomination came out. Similarly, in the East Coast, Centaurs were created by being infected with the FEV in Vault-87. Vault-87 was eventually turned into a research center to study the effects of FEV on humans. Eventually, the super mutants managed to escape and overwhelm the security force and take over the vault. Super mutants would then kidnap humans from all over the Capital Waste and drag them unwillingly back to the vault to be mutated. Centaur's appearance consists of a horrifying jumble of arms, legs, teeth, and tentacles, all stuck together on a walking hunk of flesh that spits radioactive acid at you. The Centaurs are typically accompanied by super mutants, where they act as guard dogs of sorts. They don't make any noise, meaning it's not too hard for them to sneak up on unsuspecting wastelanders. But they are quite weak and kind of easy to dispose of. Despite this, no matter how easy it is to take on a centaur, you'll likely never forget its horrifying, anguished face after your first encounter. That has been 11 of the creepiest creatures in the Fallout universe. Let me know which one you guys think was the absolute creepiest. For me personally, it's gotta be a tie between the Y-17 and Ghost People. Just something about being trapped in a suit is just terrifying. But you know what's not terrifying? My beautiful Patreons. We got Brian Hahn, Person, Dirty Dan, Falaky Potato, Icy Storm, B-Rad the Man, Giovanni Diaz, Mayall, G-Daddy Smackdown, Forg, Ty Mulan, and Henry Heiberg. If you want to be a Patreon, link is right down there below in the description. Patreons get videos early and are just better than everybody else. That's it. Leave.